Good evening and welcome to the Lower Thames Crossing webinar. Thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar about the Community Impacts Consultation. Today we're going to be providing you with an update and summary of the impacts of our proposals on the community and the environment and how we plan to mitigate them, specifically for the Brentwood and Havering area. To be clear, this isn't an exhaustive account of the impacts and proposals, but rather we're providing you with an overview of some of the more notable elements and changes since our design refinement consultation last year. There are many other ways you can ask specific questions, and I'm going to give you more details on that in a moment. So we're going to start off today by briefly introducing ourselves. My name is Sarah Walker and I work for Highways England, and I'm going to be moderating today's webinar.
Hi, I'm Gary Hodge, Technical Lead for the Lower Thames Crossing, and I'll be helping to answer your questions a little later on.
Hello there, I'm Gareth Fotherow. I'm the Development Director for the Lower Thames Crossing, and I'll also be helping to answer your questions later on.
And we also have Emma and Hayley with us today, who you can see on camera throughout this evening's webinar. They're both British Sign Language interpreters and will be providing sign language translation for those who've joined us this evening who are deaf or have hearing impairments. Now, should you wish to expand the view of the BSL interpreters at any time, simply hover your mouse over their camera and click the button to expand. The webinar also has live captions. So today's webinar is going to be split into three sections. The first section is a live introduction to the scheme presented by me. The middle section is a pre-recorded presentation outlining the changes with a particular emphasis on the Kent area. And then the final section will be our live Q&A session, where our team are going to be available to answer questions that you may have about this consultation. So we're going to begin this evening with an introduction to the Lower Thames Crossing project and give you an overview of why we're consulting again. We'll also let you know how your feedback from previous consultations has shaped the project, tell you about some recent changes, and then tell you about the impacts of the construction and operations the road will have on local communities and the environment. At the end of today's session, we'll be holding a question and answer session where we'll be taking and answering your questions about this community impacts consultation. We've produced a number of documents that may help explain our plans, and as we move through the webinar, we'll signpost where you can go to find more information on any particular topic. These include the guide to consultation. This is an overview of the information that's included in the consultation materials and directions on where you can find out more detail in the technical documents. There's the construction update. This is an overview of the methods that would be used to build the new road and the tunnel and changes to the existing utilities infrastructure. It also details the measures proposed to mitigate potential adverse effects of construction. There's the operations update. This provides information on the new road, junctions, tunnels, utilities, environmental design and green infrastructure. It also includes changes that we've made since the last consultation. It also includes some updates to our traffic forecasts and how the new road would impact the environment. And if I could recommend one document to you, it would be the Ward Impact Summary, or several summaries. These documents go into a lot of detail about the changes and impacts the new road may have very near you during its construction and operation. These cover topics such as changes to traffic, noise, and of course air quality. Then there's the You Said We Did document. Now, this is a summary of responses that we've received during our 3 previous consultations, and it sets out how these have been used to further refine the project's design. And then last, but certainly not least, we've produced a series of maps to help show how the project might look during construction and when it's open to traffic. There's also an interactive map on our dedicated website. Now, if you do have any questions, please do post them at any time whenever they come to mind, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can at the end of this evening's presentation. But of course, there are also a range of other ways that you can talk to us. If you want to speak to someone one-to-one, then you can book a telephone call back from a member of the project team or come along to one of our consultation events. All our consultation materials are available on our dedicated website, or you can ask for a printed copy to be delivered to your home free of charge, or pick up copies at libraries or civic centres along the proposed route. We'll cover these again at the end and highlight some of the different ways in which you can make sure that you have your say in this consultation. So we're now going to move to the pre-recorded section of this evening's webinar, and I look forward to talking to you all again very soon.
Hi, my name's Claire Donnelly and I'm here to take you through the details of the Community Impacts Consultation. There's going to be a lot of information to cover, so I'll be joined a bit later by my colleague John Barkman. Just to recap on that video, the Lower Thames Crossing is a proposed new road connecting Kent, Thurrock, Havering and Essex through two 2.6-mile tunnels beneath the River Thames. It would almost double road capacity across the river east of London, boosting local, regional and national economies while offering new connections, better journeys and fewer delays. On the north side, it would link to the A13 in Thurrock and the M25 in Havering. On the south side of the River Thames, the new road would link to the A2 and M2 in Kent. So let me start by telling you more about what we are consulting on. To get permission to build and operate the new crossing, we must follow a specific planning process and seek a Development Consent Order, or DCO. In October 2020, we submitted an application for a DCO, but following feedback and discussions with the Planning Inspectorate, we withdrew it to provide more information. We have been working to address the Inspectorate's feedback and, as part of this process, we are holding this further round of public consultation to seek your views on our plans to build and operate the Lower Thames Crossing and how we will mitigate its impact, changes to the project since the design refinement consultation in 2020, and how responses received at each of our previous consultations have informed the development of the project. And it's this where we start our presentation tonight. Consultation and engagement have been critical in helping us design the project to reduce the impacts and to maximise the benefits. We have carried out a record-breaking programme of consultation, engagement and design development. Over the last 8 years, we have been in public consultation for over 350 days, with almost 90,000 of you giving us your views. In 2018, we held a statutory consultation to provide members of the public and anyone with an interest in the project with an update of the route, as well as the opportunity to have their say. This was followed by a supplementary consultation in January 2020, which was held to obtain people's views on changes made as a result of feedback from statutory consultation and technical engagement with stakeholders. A further consultation, our design refinement consultation, was held in summer 2020. We have also carried out environmental surveys, traffic modelling and detailed design work, such as identifying diversions to existing utilities. These are just a handful of the changes we have made following your feedback. To improve your journey, we have provided three lanes along most of the route, including the tunnel. To reduce the impact on local communities, we have lowered the height of the road between North Ockendon and South Ockendon to minimise visual impact to communities in these areas. 80% of the whole route is now in the tunnel, a cutting, or behind an embankment. We have included a new footbridge over the M25 to connect the Thames Chase Community Forest and Land of the Fans project. We have also added noise barriers and earthworks to reduce noise. The look and material of those noise barriers will be developed by our contractor at the detailed design stage, but you can see their proposed heights and locations in our consultation materials. We've increased the number of new or upgraded walking paths, cycle paths and bridleways to 46 kilometres. That's 2 kilometres of path for every 1 kilometre of new road. This includes providing connections between Thames Chase Community Forest and Belhurst Woods Country Park. Also, to reduce the impact on the environment, we've increased the number of trees we are replanting and are now planting 260 hectares of new woodland, 200% more than will be affected by the project. We have moved the slip roads to and from the A127 at the M25 junction 29 closer to the roundabout to avoid diverting overhead power lines and pylons. The You Said We Did document is a summary of the responses we've received during the previous consultations and how these have been used to further refine the project's design. It discusses each consultation in a separate chapter with a breakdown of the feedback we received, our responses to both negative and positive comments, and how we made changes to our plans. This document, along with all of our consultation materials, is available on our consultation website. I'll now hand you over to John to discuss recent changes.
Thank you, Claire. Hello, my name's John Barkman. I'm going to speak to you about the recent changes on the project. Your feedback during our design refinement consultation in the summer of 2020 has helped further shape the development of the project. We've also made some changes to the project as a result of continued engagement with stakeholders, ongoing design work and assessments, and a greater understanding of the technical constraints to the building and operating of the new road. Two important ways in which our plans have developed relate to our proposed order limits and utility works. The order limits, which was known as the development boundary in previous consultations, are the outermost edges of the Lower Thames Crossing project. They show the extent to which land can be acquired or used for the project and are in the areas in which the development consents order applies. Since our last consultation, we've reduced the area within the revised order limits from 22.9 to 22.2 kilometers square. We've also reduced the number of properties within the order limits to 130 from 150. We've been working very hard to reduce the impact on the landscape, local residents, landowners, and businesses, while also working to reduce any visual impacts and restrictions associated with the utility networks when the work is complete. All of our changes are listed in Chapter 3 of our operations update, but here are some of the key changes. At the Mardyke Valley North Road, the proposed replacement of Orset Fen common land has been reconfigured and the order limits amended. The landscape design near the Mardyke crossing has been amended to provide a suitable ditch network and habitat for water voles. An overall reduction to the odor limits around Ockenden Road and P Lane to avoid impacting the existing vegetation. A flood relief channel would be built next to the Mardyke at the western end of the proposed viaduct. The size of the compensatory flood storage area to the north of Green Lane has been reduced. At the M25 junction 29, an extension of the odor limits around St. Mary's Lane substation to include an existing substation, which some of our utility diversions will connect to. Woodland planting and environmental mitigation proposals in the area to the north of junction 29 of the M25 and around Folks Lane Woodland have been changed to avoid impacting a local business. And access from Moore Lane East and from Lamberham Gardens is no longer needed due to the proposed introduction of access directly from the new junction 29 road. We're committed to creating a positive green legacy. We're therefore proposing two new open space sites, Tilbury Fields on the north bank of the Thames and Chalk Park in Kent. The Riverside Park will be just to the south of the northern tunnel entrance and will be around 45 hectares in size. This land is going through a phase of restoration and improvement and is next to the site of the former Tilbury Power Station. Over the past 10 years, many of the major infrastructure projects in London have contributed to clean material to raise the ground level around and restore it back to farmland. We're likely to be the last remaining project to work in this area. Tilbury Fields will be created using some 2 million cubic meters of material dug from the tunnels and other associated works in the areas. We're able to save around 470,000 lorry movements as we won't need to transport this material on public roads. We want to know your views on the height and the landform once the design of the park is finalized. You'll find a specific question about this within the consultation response form. Although not featured in our consultation, we're also planning a new 100-hectare community woodland whole farm in Brentwood, Essex. For further information on our new open spaces, you can view the guide to construction and operation update documents in our construction consultation website. I'll now hand over back to Claire to speak about construction.
Thanks, John. We are absolutely committed to reducing the impact of building the new road crossing on you and the environment. In this section, we will give you an overview of where we plan to be working in your area and cover the sequence and timing of the work, its potential impact, and our plans to reduce those impacts. You can find out more in our construction update document on our website, and the detail is broken down by your area in our ward summaries. Our work will be divided into 4 construction sections to help make sure that they are delivered on time with the minimum impact on local communities, the environment and road users. There are 2 sections in your area in Thurrock, Brentwood and Havering. These are construction areas C and D. Construction section C encompasses the A13 junction with a southern spur reaching down to the Tilbury Loop railway line. It also reaches up to Green Lane in the north and to the Orsett Cock roundabout in the east. There are 7 proposed construction compounds in section C. You can see them here on the map. The first is Stifford's Clay Row compounds east and west. These would be used for construction north of the northwest section of the A13 Lower Thames Crossing junction. We would build a temporary access haul route from the west compound from Meadbridge Road. Before then, Stifford's Clay Road would be used to access both east and west compounds. When the compounds are taken down, we would remove all temporary assets and the land would be reinstated. Long lane compounds A and B would be used to support the construction of the slip roads south of the A13 and west of the A1089, as well as the western underpass bridge below the A13. Access would be via Long Lane. We would set up the compounds early in the construction period and they would be in use until August 2028. The Stanford Road compound would support works affecting the slip roads between the A13 and the A1013. The compound is located on Hornsby Lane, which would be permanently severed either side of the new road. Before the road is closed, we would put in turning arrangements. When the compound is taken down, we would remove all temporary utility works and infrastructure and the land would be reinstated. The Brentwood Road compound would support works south of the A13 towards the Tilbury Loop railway line. Access would be from Brentwood Road between the Orsett Cock Junction and the Lower Thames Crossing route. The compound would be in place from early 2024 to mid-2028. The Station Road compound would support works at the Tilbury Viaduct and on connecting roads. It would be in place for approximately 3 years from 2024. Where possible, temporary utility works needed for each compound would be carried out at the same time as permanent works to reduce the length of our programme and its impact on the local community. Section D is the part of the Lower Thames Crossing between the A13 junction and the M25, including the M25 junction. There are 5 proposed construction compounds in Section D, as you can see on the map here. Moving from the north, we start with the Worley Street compound. This compound would support the widening of the M25, mostly around Junction 29. Access would be via a temporary haul road from Worley Street. The Ockenden Road compound would support construction of the new bridge to carry the Ockenden Road over the new road's northbound carriageway, the widening of the M25 northbound carriageway, and the earthworks to the west of the M25. Site access would be via Clay Tie Road at the start of works before a temporary works access is built off of the M25. After that, Clay Tie Road would only be used for workforce access. The M25 compound would support construction of the Lower Thames Crossing between the A13 and the M25. As at the Ockenden Road compound, site access would be via Clay Tie Road at the start of the works before a temporary works access is built off of the M25. After that, Clay Tie Road would only be used for workforce access. The Meadbridge Road compound would be used to support the construction of the new road between the M25 and the new Mardyke Viaduct. Construction vehicles would need to use Fen Lane at the start of the programme for around 9 months to allow utilities works to be carried out. We would need to use traffic management measures with closures in place at approximately 300-metre sections of the road. The Mardyke compound would support construction works in the area surrounding the Mardyke Viaduct, but would not be in place for the duration of the construction. Initially, access would be via Green Lane until we set up temporary haul routes for the construction traffic only. During the works, access would be required from Stifford's Clay roundabout to these routes alongside the Lower Thames Crossing. Construction in each section would typically cover 3 main phases. The first is the initial works, which would involve setting up the construction compounds. Then main works, which would include the construction of the highways north and south of the Thames and all elements of the tunnels and their approaches, as well as utilities and environmental mitigation works. Finally, testing and commissioning, which is when we will make sure that the new road and its infrastructure is safe and ready to use. Here is the programme of works in Section C. You can see here the various timelines when the works will be taking place. Similarly, this is the programme for works in Section D. If you want to find out more about both construction programmes, please see Chapter 5 of our construction update. Normal working hours are proposed to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on weekdays and 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays, plus up to 1 hour before and after for start-up and close-down procedures. Working hours for certain activities, including earthworks, would be up to 10 p.m. on Monday to Saturday. Sometimes we might need an extension, but we would agree this in advance. Tunnelling construction activities and supporting works would be carried out on a continuous 24/7 basis. We have also identified very limited highways and utilities construction activities that may need to be done overnight and at weekends. For example, where we would be tying new sections of the road into the existing road network. These works would be carried out at night and at weekends to maintain safety and reduce disruption to the road, railway and utilities networks. These works are anticipated to be for short periods, and we would usually work closely with the local authority to manage any impacts on the local community. In this region, areas of 24-hour working would include the overbridges, some utilities works, and works around the M25. These are shown in the ward impact summaries and on the interactive map. During construction, we would carry out the activities typically associated with major infrastructure projects. This includes tunnelling and earthworks, road surfacing and widening, and tie-in and finishing works. In this image, you can see the start of work on a typical cutting. These works will inevitably have an impact on the area, but by applying best practice and using technology, we can reduce that impact. Here are some examples of how. We would build dedicated haul routes to significantly reduce the number of construction vehicles using the existing roads near to the project, and we would promote car sharing and public transport to reduce the number of staff cars on these roads. We would use established practices and developing technology to minimize impacts on the environment and on road users, such as consolidating materials into fewer deliveries, having construction areas and compounds that would be located to support distinct works, reducing the need for vehicles and materials to move through the community to each location, having a booking and delivery system that would plan and monitor vehicle movements, using multimodal transport, a combination of road, water and rail to optimize the transport and delivery of materials. Planning, our contractors would produce construction logistics plans, and protecting vulnerable road users by introducing appropriate measures to protect walkers, cyclists and horse riders. By using the methods mentioned, we will reduce our impact on local traffic, but during construction, some bus routes would still need to be temporarily diverted or changed. When we carry out work next to sensitive railway lines, there may also be some weekend and night closures that will affect rail services. You can find out the detail of what specific services will be affected in our ward impact summaries. Some public rights of way, such as footpaths or bridleways, may also be affected by construction and need to be temporarily diverted or closed. Some public rights of way would be closed permanently and replaced by new ones during the construction period or once the new road is complete. Please look at our ward impact summary documents to find out about the impacts near you. To minimise construction noise and vibration, we are proposing to locate construction compounds as far away from residential areas as possible and to build earth walls or bunds around them. We are also proposing measures such as closed board fencing installed around each of the construction compounds to provide screening, the use of low noise equipment where practical, and locating noisy activities as far away as possible from noise sensitive receptors. We are also introducing a number of ways to reduce the visual impact of the project on the landscape. Visual impacts will be reduced by carefully considering the location and layout of the compounds, using screens and temporary fencing, and positioning taller facilities as far away as possible from residential properties. We will also look to revegetate stockpiles to soften their appearance. Along the proposed Lower Thames Crossing, there are a number of existing utilities, including overhead power lines, high-pressure gas pipelines, electric cables and substations, gas mains, water pipes, sewers, and fibre optic and telecom cables that would all need to be diverted to build the new road. Our proposals for utility works have evolved during the project's design and development. We have been working very closely with utilities companies to significantly reduce the environmental impacts and shorten the duration of these works. There should be no disruption to the supply of power, water, or any other utilities caused by our construction works. For more information on the planned utility works, please go to Chapter 2 of the Construction Update. When we apply to the Planning Inspectorate for permission to build the new road, we will provide a range of documents that set out how we would make sure our contractors effectively manage the impacts of construction on the environment and local communities. These are called control documents, and we are providing drafts of them as part of this consultation. They include the Code of Construction Practice, which provides a framework for how we will manage construction activity, and it becomes a legally binding document that will ensure we deliver the environmental mitigation commitments we have made. If permission to build the new road is granted to us, the control documents would be developed further by our contractors and, once agreed upon, those contractors would have legal obligations to comply with the conditions they contain. Control documents are discussed in more detail in Chapter 1 of the Construction Update. For further information on construction, please see the Construction Update document on our consultation website. And I will hand you back over to John to talk about our operational impacts.
Thank you, Claire. When the Lower Thames Crossing opens for traffic, the direct, reliable connection would bring people closer to jobs and businesses closer to their customers and suppliers. The new crossing would offer reduced congestion at the Dartford crossing and approach roads, additional capacity, more reliable journeys across the River Thames, east of London, and will support economic growth locally, regionally, and nationally. In our operations update, we've summarized the impact of the operation of the road on your community and on the local environment. This section presents a summary of the impacts of the new road and the tunnel after their planned opening in 2029. This video gives you an overview of how the new crossing will look in Thurrock, Essex and Havering. You can see the new junction layout between the Lower Thames Crossing, the A13 and the 1089 to the west of Orsett. The new Lower Thames Crossing will cross under the new Green Bridge at Green Lane and then continue across the Mardyke River and Golden Sewer. At this point, it swings west and passes north of the landfill site and to the south of the wilderness before passing under North Road Green Bridge. It would then connect with the M25. The junction will be located just under 2 miles or 3 kilometers south of Junction 29 on the M25 near Ockendon Road and the Thames Chase Community Forest. The junction will have slip roads for northbound LTC traffic to join the M25 and the M25 traffic to join the LTC. A short section of the M25 will be reduced from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. Improvement work will also be carried out on the M25 between the new junction and Junction 29. Beyond the northern section of the Lower Thames Crossing, Improvement and modification works will also be needed at junction 29 on the M25 and to the north of junction 29. There will also be required modifications to the junction and slip roads. We've carefully assessed the road network in the area and predicted how it might perform in the future with and without the new crossing, known as the do something and the do minimum scenarios. If the Lower Thames Crossing is not built, it is expected that the high levels of traffic using the Dartford Crossing would lead to more incidents, increased journey times, and more days where traffic conditions are worse than typically experienced. We predict there would be nearly a 12% higher in the morning peak and nearly 28% higher in the evening peak if the project were not built. As a result of the Lower Thames Crossing, there are predicted to be improvements in how the road network operates around the Dartford Crossing and on other roads in Brentwood and Havering. On the wider network, conditions would remain largely unchanged, but congestion is predicted to increase on some roads, particularly those close to the project. When built, the level of daily traffic using the Dartford Crossing would fall on average by 21% in 2029 and 14% in 2044 compared to the do minimum scenario. Average speeds on that part of the network would rise and journey times would become more reliable. In our operations update, you can find the precise maps and impacts in your area, but to summarize, on roads such as the A127, there would be a reduction in traffic in some locations when the Lower Thames Crossing opens. However, in some roads on the approach to the new crossing, such as some sections on the A13, may see an increase. You can find out more about this in our Guide to Construction and Operations update. We've developed measures to reduce the noise and vibration at sensitive locations, such as people's homes or wildlife along the route and on some existing roads. For example, we've located the road as far as reasonably practical, away from noise-sensitive locations. We've also designed the new road to be at low level, with approximately 80% of the route in a cutting, false cutting, or tunnel, and use earthworks where possible to reduce noise. Mitigation measures will also include the use of low-noise road surfacing technologies on new and resurfaced roads, and noise barriers at certain locations along the route where the earthwork measures are not possible. The main method of controlling noise would be, where practical, to design the road within landscape features such as cuttings and bunds or walls of earth. However, where noise impacts are greatest, we would install noise barriers in addition to these earthwork features. The use of low noise surfacing would also reduce the traffic noise once the road is in use. This map shows where the noise barriers have been incorporated into the design along the new road and the A13. Here's an example of where the noise barriers are located. You can find out more about the location of the proposed noise barriers in Chapter 5 of the Operations Update. And this image, which is contained in the operation update, shows the areas in Havering and Brentwood with an adverse or beneficial change to the traffic noise in the opening year. As you can see, there are some areas with a major adverse change of greater than 5 decibels, and some with no changes and major beneficial changes. To find out more about the specific changes to noise in your area, please see our ward impact summaries. We've reduced the visual impact of the road by placing around 80% of the route in a cutting, false cutting, or tunnel, and where possible use earthworks or new planting to conceal the road. This image shows one of the new public rights-of-way we're creating to improve accessibility to and from Thames Chase. In the foreground, you can see some of the woodland planting alongside the M25. As our design has developed, we've taken some significant steps to avoid or minimize impacts on the local communities and the environment where possible. Some examples include a tunnel setback protected from the protected woodland to mitigate the effects on bird species, reducing working areas to mitigate habitat loss in ancient woodland and SSSI sites, the creation of habitats for protected species, forging new green corridors to join habitats along the project. But where we have been able to, we've gone further and will be delivering a net gain in biodiversity across the Lower Thames Crossing area. This includes 260 hectares of new woodland created, representing a 200% increase, over 400 hectares of arable land converted to semi-natural habitats, 40 new ponds, a 40% increase, 80% of new hedgerow created and lost, a 120% increase, and 7.3 kilometers of new ditches, a 10% increase. There are likely to be impacts on journey times for some of the bus and coach services if traffic speeds of the roads they use change once the new road opens. Most routes would not be affected, and the impact of the individual passengers would depend on where they got on and got off a particular service. For example, a commuter coach along the A2 would travel at a lower speed east of the new crossing, but at a higher speed west of it. For further information on specific bus routes that would be affected can be found in Chapter 4 of the Operations Update. Working with local communities and organisations such as Sustrans, a UK walking and cycling charity, we've developed a programme of improvements for walkers, cyclists and horse riders that will connect local communities with green spaces and promote active travel choices. Following previous consultations and targeted stakeholder engagement, we developed a walkers, cyclist, horse rider strategy, which we shared at a design refinement consultation. We examined the value of the existing and potential routes. A list of possible opportunities was developed that would result in 46 kilometers of new, realigned or improved footpaths, cycleways and bridleways. In determining these, we considered factors such as connections to employment, education, recreational green space, as well as addressing historic severance. More detail on assessing the environmental impacts and mitigation is available in Chapter 5 of the Operation Update, and local information is available in the ward impact summaries. Between the A13 and around the M25 junction, improvements include creating recreational walking, cycling, horse riding routes from the Thames Chase and South Ockenden Little Bell House Community Park to the Orsett Fen and beyond, upgrading existing public rights-of-way and adding additional sections to create routes that loop around and connect people to green spaces, addressing historical severance caused by the construction of the M25. And on all, hand over back to Claire to speak about air quality.
Thanks, John. So we fully understand that many people have concerns about the effect the project will have on air quality. Although during operation of the Lower Thames Crossing, some areas are predicted to experience decreases in air quality due to changes in traffic flows across the region, there will be improvements in others and an improvement in air quality in the project-wide area overall. The change in concentrations of pollutants has been assessed, and a reduction in concentrations of nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter is predicted at receptors between existing conditions and future conditions before the Lower Thames Crossing opens. Oops. One of the key aims of the project is to relieve the congested Dartford Crossing and approach roads and improve their performance by providing free-flowing north-south capacity. The Lower Thames Crossing would take over 13 million vehicles off the Dartford Crossing, which means there would be less congestion and air quality would improve. Our air quality monitoring has found that the Dartford Crossing is currently exceeding standards due to vehicle emissions. When the Lower Thames Crossing is open, air quality at Dartford would improve and areas around the Dartford Crossing would no longer exceed air quality standards. There are expected to be reductions in vehicle emissions over this period, for example, due to the uptake of electric and alternatively fueled vehicles, in part driven by the banning of sales in diesel and petrol cars from 2030. At opening year, based on the model used for our first DCO application in 2020, the assessments showed that there would be localised increases on certain roads, such as the M2 junction 1 to 2. Causing air quality to get worse and exceed the national air quality objective for NO2. However, the results also show numerous air quality improvements around the A282 Dartford Crossing, where existing air quality is poor due to significant reductions in traffic and congestion. In total, 24 receptors are expected to experience a change in air quality in those areas where concentrations of pollutants are forecast to exceed the air quality objective set by the government. Of these 24, 15 are predicted to experience an improvement in air quality. The remaining 9 are predicted to experience poorer air quality once the route is open. Our air quality assessments are based on the traffic flows predicted from the traffic model explained in Chapter 4 of the Operations Update. One of the biggest operational changes as a result of the Lower Thames Crossing is an improvement in traffic flows and a decrease in journey times across the River Thames and across many parts of the Lower Thames area. One clear benefit of this is better, faster access to existing jobs in the local and wider network. In our ward impact summaries, we flag how many existing jobs this brings to within a 30 or 60-minute commute of your local area. In this area, the largest increase within a 30-minute journey time by car would be in the Upminster ward, where some residents would have access to more than 88,000 additional jobs. That's a 17% increase. When you look at what jobs you can reach within an hour, the increase is even greater. The largest increase within a 60-minute journey time by car would be for those who live in Ockenden, where 550,000 additional jobs would fall within a 60-minute journey time by car. This is a 22% increase. These journey times are based on travelling at morning peak between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. You can find out more about operations when the road is open in our operations update. Our ward impact summaries are among the documents produced for this consultation. Each chapter includes a ward-specific overview of the impacts and benefits during construction and once the road is open, on topics such as environmental impacts and the impacts on the community. The wards included are those that are directly affected by the project or lie within our order limits. To make the ward summaries more user-friendly, we have split the document into 3 sections to cover the wards to the north and south of the River Thames. Each chapter will summarise the current situation and explain how construction and operation would affect that ward. We set out the impacts that are predicted to be, what the impacts are predicted to be, and the measures we would use to mitigate them. Where there are no impacts, we also highlight this. The ward impact summaries cover the following: traffic, public transport, footpaths, bridleways and cycle routes, visual, noise and vibration, air quality, health, biodiversity and contamination management. To find out more about our construction and operational impacts, please have a look at the ward impact summaries in your area. This brings us to the end of the recorded session. Many thanks for your time, and we'll now hand you back over to Sarah and the team for the Q&A.
Thank you, everyone.
Hello and welcome back. Thank you all for listening. So this marks the end of the pre-recorded section of this evening's webinar. And as we mentioned at the very start, our goal today was to provide you with an overview of the changes we've made since the design refinement consultation back in 2020, as well as our plans to build and operate the Lower Thames Crossing and how we're going to mitigate its impact. If you'd like more detailed information, then I would suggest visiting the website, which is www.ltcconsultation.highwaysengland.co.uk. And there you can access digital copies of all of the consultation materials that we've referred to this evening. So we appreciate we've given you an awful lot of information to digest over the last half an hour or so. So we're going to take a quick break now, and we'll be right back in about 3 minutes' time to run through the questions that you've submitted before and during this webinar. See you soon. Hello and welcome back. Okay, so now for our question and answer session, and I can see that we've had a couple of linked questions come in, and the first question this evening is on noise. Gary, this might be one for you. The questioner has said, in the ward summary, we show less noise around the M25 junction, but there's more traffic on that section. They're asking, how can that be? And linked to this, the second part of the question, they say, I can see that you've got low noise surfacing along the M25 at Cranham and Harold Wood Ward, but why don't we have noise barriers here? Gary, can you pick up both those points?
Yeah, we've put low noise surfacing on all our junctions and where we carry out work on the wider road network. This low noise surfacing will help reduce the noise impact on communities around our new junctions in the M25. So while there would be an increase in traffic, there would be less noise due to the new road surfacing. Within the wards, changes in road traffic noise is identified noise sensitive locations and predicted to range from a modest decrease in levels with between about 3 and 4.9 dBA to negligible increase in less than 1 dBA. So where we carry out the detailed assessment of expected noise impact, and we design the location of noise barriers based on these impacts. So the noise barriers are used to dampen and minimize the sound of the construction noise and road traffic noise levels. The noise modeling around Harold's Wood indicates that we would either have minimum noise reduction as a result of the low noise road surfacing or negligible effect. Therefore, we aren't planning noise barriers in this area.
Thank you, Gary. Hopefully that's been helpful to the person who asked the question. Gareth, a question for you now, asking, why did we get rid of the pedestrian crossing across the M25 at the A127 junction?
Okay, thanks, Sarah. One of the reasons we needed we haven't removed that crossing, we've amended it. One of the reasons we needed to amend that junction is because our design has a set of dedicated on and off slips from the A127 onto the M25. So where the people used to cross, obviously it would be unsafe to cross, to try and put people across those dedicated slips. So we've now taken them away from those dedicated slips and take them over a grade separated crossing and then onto the junction itself, and then pedestrians and non-motorised users are able to use a signalised crossing through the junction itself to enable them continue to go on their route. So that the crossing facility is still there, it's just been amended.
Thank you, that's great. Another question for Gary, I think, quite specific. Why is it that we needed to close Ockenden Road?
Ockenden Road, I mean, the existing Ockenden Road bridge that goes over the M25 is not being touched, but we've got to take the Ockenden Road over the new link from Lower Thames Crossing up to join the M25 and junction 29. So there will be a temporary closure of a small section of the Ockenden Road between the railway line and the M25. The plans are to shut it down for 19 months. And I think within the ward summaries, it says it's from June 2025 to March 2027. A diversion will be put in place, and it will be via local roads. And this is really to allow us to safely carry out the earthworks to build the new cutting for the new slip road from Lower Thames Crossing northbound onto the M25. So that's the primary reason for the closure of that particular link.
So closed for 19 months, but not permanently.
No.
Okay, thank you. Gareth, another question from you, again, quite a specific location, asking us what impact is the scheme having on the solar farm near Junction 29? Do you know about that?
Yeah. Yes, actually, yes, I can pick that up. Yeah, wherever possible, we're always seeking to minimise the impact on property owners and businesses, and obviously we've further reduced the amount of land that we need to build and operate the Lower Thames Crossing. However, unfortunately, the land currently used by the Crenham Solar Farm is required for multiple land requirements, including widening the M25, which adjoins the solar farm. We have been in discussions with the operators of the solar farm since 2019, and we're working to reach an agreement with them.
Thank you, Gareth. We know that we've had a number of questions in about the environment. Gary, this is perhaps one that you can pick up, asking what's being done to mitigate the environmental damage to Thames Chase?
Right, yeah, we would have an impact on Thames Chase Community Forest. We're building a new parallel link road on the west side of the M25. So we'd need to use about, I think it's about 14.5 acres of land, some of which would only require it on a temporary basis. We plan to replace this land with about 15.5 acres of open space, which is all directly linked to the existing woodland. This would be landscaped and complemented by current sites and connecting to existing footpaths in the area. We are in regular discussion with the Forestry England and Thames Chase Trust, so we'd meet their requirements with replacing the land. And across the whole route, we are providing, as I think we said, you heard it in the video, that we're providing 260 hectares of new woodland across the scheme. So we will also provide a new public footpath over the M25. I think there was an image of that again in the presentation, which creates a stronger link to the Thames Chase Community Forest. And in addition to the Lower Thames Crossing proposals, we are also proposing to provide a new 100 acres community woodland at Hull Farm in Essex. More information of this can be found within the operational update.
I think there's some information about that on our website as well. Thank you very much indeed. Gareth, again, quite a specific question coming up now. Where are we relocating the Gammon Field Travellers site to?
Yes, obviously due to the impact to the Gammon Field Travellers site, we are proposing to relocate the site. Back in 2020, we did consult on 2 potential replacement site locations. And following the feedback that we received during that consultation, we're now consulting on a single location, which is adjacent to its current location to the west, actually, with access off Gammon Fields Way.
Thank you. And another quite specific location question, Gary, this time for you, asking, have there been any changes to works at the Orsett Showground? I know this has come up before, but can you take that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, following landowner and stakeholder feedback, and this was following our last consultation, we have moved the Cadent high pressure gas pipeline further south along the northern edge of the A13. And this is to provide less impact on the actual showground. This means that we can reduce the amount of land we need and minimize any impacts on not only the showground. There's also a football pitches, which is for the Orsett Royals, and so we've actually discuss this with the utility companies to try to minimize the actual width of the utility corridor that we need. So yes, we have actually reduced the land take to the north of the A13.
Good news, thank you. A very topical question now, Gareth, perhaps one for you. This person is asking, given this week's IPCC report saying that we're on code red due to climate change, what additional measures are we looking to take to help this country meet the targets that are needed to prevent climate change? Gareth?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, certainly. To reduce the carbon impact of the Lower Thames Crossing, there's a number of things that we're looking to do. Firstly, it's to remove and reduce the size of the cross section of the scheme through design refinement, such as removing some of the junctions such as the A226 and reducing the number of southbound lanes. We'd also look to use lower carbon concrete, steel fibre reinforced rather than rebar reinforced, the traditional reinforced concrete, and that saves approximately 30,000 tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions. We're also looking to use a low carbon cement rather than the traditional cement, which again would reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by approximately 160,000 tonnes. When the scheme is open, we're looking to plant additional trees, shrubs and hedgerows to offset emissions and maintain existing and provide new connectivity for walkers, cyclists and horse riders. And in addition to that, the electricity for the operation of Lower Thames Crossing will be procured from renewable suppliers. And there's also low energy light sources will be used to reduce energy consumption. To ensure the effects of climate change are minimised during operation, the Lower Thames Crossing has been designed and would be built to be more resilient to the effects of future climate change, such as establishing future flood risks in consultation with the Environment Agency and local authorities.
Thank you. And I know it's something, sorry.
Carry on, I was just going to add, this would then incorporate the flood alleviation measures in the design to reduce the flood risk.
Yeah, that's great. I was just going to say that I know that this is something that we're going to continue to look at, not just on this project, but across Highways England. We have just released our carbon strategy, so it's a subject that's right at the top of our agenda. Gary, a question for you now, this time about Upminster. Saying during construction, Upminster is likely to experience much more congestion. How are these impacts going to be mitigated?
You're right. Yeah, there'll be several mitigation measures to reduce the impact of construction on the local residents, including reducing the use of the local roads by the construction vehicles. And then to reduce the traffic impacts in Upminster Ward, we'd be carrying out measures such as minimising use of local road network as far as practical through construction of temporary offline haul routes directly from the strategic road. So we would be looking at trying to put as many of the haul routes within the footprint of the actual scheme rather than onto the local roads. Our proposals also would allow for the excavated material and would substantially reduce the need to dispose of the excavated material via road network, thereby reducing the number of HGV movements from the public road network during construction phases. So we're trying to make sure that we actually reuse as much of the excavated material as we possibly can. And then following discussions with key stakeholders, and where possible, HGV associated with construction of the project would be banned from using some of the local roads. So also another thing we'd be looking at doing is stockpiling material within the order limits to allow material to be managed on site rather than off site, reducing again the number of trips that we'd have for the HGVs.
Thank you, Gareth. Gary, quite a lot to cover there. I think we've got time for just one more question, Gareth, this time one more for you, and we know that this is a subject that interests people locally, asking, will those with a local resident discount account for the existing crossing be able to use their account for use on the Lower Thames Crossing, or will people have to duplicate and pay twice? And a supplementary question to that, why won't Havering residents get a local residents discount?
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, charging at both the Dartford Crossing and the Lower Thames Crossing will be set by the government. Our proposals are that the Dartford residents would continue to be offered discounts at the Dartford crossing. Gravesham residents would be offered a discount for the lower Thames crossing. Thurrock residents will be offered discounts for both crossings. As at Dartford, the user discount is applied to residents for those boroughs where the crossing entrance is located, that is the tunnel entrance to the start of the bridge. However, as I said earlier, the decision on charging really is a matter for the government. And to be clear, there would be no charge for using the road between the M25 and the A13 junction. The charge would only apply to the crossing itself.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's about all we've got time for this evening. We've run slightly over time. Thank you for everybody's questions. Before we go, we'll just give you a quick reminder on how to give your feedback on this community impacts consultation. All of the information, including the response form, is available on our website. I'll give you a web address again, www.highwaysengland.co.uk/LTC consultation. And of course, the easiest way to comment is simply by filling out our online consultation response form. But of course, you can submit a response using other methods listed on the slide there. Should you know anyone who doesn't have internet access, they're also able simply just to give us a call on 0300 123 5000, and they can provide their response over the telephone as well. All responses, however they're submitted, will be accepted until 23:59, that's 1 minute to midnight on the 8th of September 2021. And of course, if you'd like to comment on aspects of our proposals from any of our earlier consultations, then please use the other comments section on the response form. So that's about all we have time for this evening. A quick reminder that you have until the 8th of September to get your responses in. Remember, you can respond to the consultation by post, by email, or through our website. All our webinars, if you haven't had a chance to capture all the detail, or you know someone else who wants to watch them, they're all available on YouTube, and we're running several more. So do make the most of those opportunities to pick out some of the details that you're most interested in. But for the time being, from everyone here, from our panelists and those behind the scenes, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you found it helpful. Good evening.
Thanks all. Good night.
Thank you.